Hello, Mr. Mack-Poole, Mr. Mack-Poole. So today we're going to look at the importance of the Soviet or the Soviet Union's invasion, or is that intervention of Afghanistan in 1979. I think this is a really interesting part of history, this proxy war. It has echoes of other conflicts, such as the American invasion of Vietnam, or more recent invasions by major powers of smaller neighboring ones. So let's have a look into this and explain the causes, events, and consequences. Just before we do that, just so you know, I'm giving you a full narrative account so you understand the wider context. But actually, this is an analysis of the importance question. So if you want to do well on this question, you need to give an explanation showing analysis of importance. Why is it important? And we'll get to that because really the consequences after an event, for me, demonstrate why it's important. And of course, we have two AOs. So you have AO2, and that is the analytical aspect of history. And you have AO1, which is your bread and butter or your gravy, for want of a bit of a word. So yeah, it's your bread and butter knowledge. Okay, so knowledge is very, very important rather than me getting confused with food metaphors. Anyway, let's continue, shall we? So let's have a little look and let's move further on. So let's look at the causes, events, and consequences. And by the way, if you got 7 or under for this question, you'll need to read pages 74 to 76. And then you're going to need to complete the try now for this, okay? Also, if you've got a red pen, I'd expect you to add some of the consequences that you didn't include for your try now on your exam, okay? Anyway, so let's have a look into this without further ado. So causes, events, consequences. Let's get to it. So first and foremost, we need to think about why. Why would the Soviet Union invade Afghanistan? After all, we've had 10 years of Dayton. Everything's been going swimmingly well. Well, let's just say, for the most part, things have been going swimmingly well for relations between the USA and the USSR. We've had SALT I, we've had the Helsinki Accords, America's become more friendly with China, and although there is a Sino-Soviet split, you can see that America is becoming more friendly with the communist world. And you've got SALT II. So Brezhnev and various American presidents from Nixon to Jimmy Carter seem to be cozying up to one another. There was even a handshake in space. So everything looks pretty good, right? So is this Brezhnev's great foreign policy blunder when he invades or intervenes in Afghanistan? Well, I think it is. I think it's his greatest mistake because really he did get the ball rolling quite well towards Dayton. And we know that Dayton essentially means that you have an improvement in relations between two formerly hostile nations, i.e. the superpowers. So let's have a look at this superpower relationship. So causes. So one of the first causes is the concerns around Muslim fundamentalism having a potential domino effect, okay? So of Islamism working within into the Soviet Union. We have to remember that ideologically, the Soviet Union is an atheistic state, okay? So Karl Marx, who is the founder of Marxism, i.e. it's named after him, he said famously that religion is the opiate of the masses. It's literally heroin for them. So Islam and communism, these two ideologies just don't see, they can't really get on, can they? Because Islam would say that Allah is God and is therefore in requirement of worship, and communists say that actually no, religion is it's the opiate of the masses. It's heroin for the mind. It makes them subservient so they don't rebel against their capitalistic masters. So we can see why the Soviet Union had concerns about a potential domino impact of Afghanistan moving into the Soviet Union. So essentially what the USSR did was founding a pro-Soviet government under a man called Amin to secure Afghanistan as a buffer state. You have to understand that Afghanistan was undergoing a power vacuum. Afghanistan itself is, and one of the causes is the geography of Afghanistan. It's mountainous and it was ruled by different warlords. Some were pro-communist, some were deeply Islamist, some were more capitalist. So there's a range of ideas in Afghanistan. They're all kind of fighting for power. Anyway, this puppet government under Amin Amin proved to be a weak leader, and rumors circulated that he was asking the USA for support. He was so desperate, so weak, he was looking to anyone for support. And a communist leader or a communist puppet taking money from the USA, Brezhnev wasn't going to have that. So Brezhnev claimed that a Soviet intervention, he called it an intervention, it took place on December the 24th of 1979. So that's the first event. So just on Christmas Eve, okay, they rolled into the Soviet Union. He also claimed that Amin invited the USSR to go into Afghanistan to help restore order, to assist him. Now the thing is that Amin was a very poor puppet leader. He was weak, vacillating. He seemed to be asking the Soviets for help and then asking the Americans. So he wasn't someone that he's not a reliable figure, they could say. So he was assassinated on the 27th of December, 3 days after the Soviet Union rolled in. Now, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to really think, well, was this the Spetsnaz forces? Was this special forces that did that? Was it carried out by Soviet commandos? And it's judged by Western historians, at the very least, that Brezhnev had ordered the assassination of Amin. So instead, a new leader, Babrak Kemal, was installed as a puppet leader. And the USSR would remain in Afghanistan for 10 years under Brezhnev, under Andropov, and more importantly, under our great friend Gorbachev. Okay, so anyway, consequences. So what are the consequences? This is the important thing for the relationship. This is what we need to focus on. Okay, détente was over. Okay, there was war in Afghanistan for 10 years. I think détente. So let's go back to that. Sorry, let's elaborate on those consequences, because détente being over is a major shift in policy. Historians often see the Cold War era as broken into maybe 2 Cold Wars. You've got the first Cold War from 1945, 46. I mean, some people say the Cold War started with the long telegram. Some people say it was the Iron Curtain. Both were in 1946. But anyway, so it's hard to say when the Cold War started. It wasn't actually a war. It was just poor relations. But it's thought that let's just say from 1945, after World War II, until 1969, that is the first Cold War. And the second Cold War runs from 1979 to 1991. I mean, historians have different opinions. But anyway, the point is that détente being over, there was 10 years in the middle where it seemed that relations were really improving, like genuinely improving. SALT 1, SALT 2, Helsinki Accords, handshake in space, and ping-pong diplomacy. So for détente being over is a major shift in policy. It's a turning point. Now, the war in Afghanistan would last 10 years, and it would be really the Soviet Union's Vietnam. So it was essentially an unwinnable war. And the reason it was an unwinnable war was, 1, because of the terrain, very, very hard to fight in. 2, the Afghanistani forces, especially the Mujahideen, they would be funded by the USA, and they would engineer a lot of support from the Arab world, including men like Osama bin Laden. Okay, Osama bin Laden. So Osama bin Laden, it's strange to think that the USA and Osama bin Laden were fighting on the same side, but as they say, politics makes strange bedfellows. So they were obviously fighting against the Soviet Union for different reasons. SALT 2 was abandoned. It was never ratified. We have the Carter Doctrine. So Jimmy Carter was the president of the USA, and he institutes this doctrine. Now, this doctrine is basically don't go anywhere near America's sphere of influence in the Middle East. Don't go near the oil. So the global economy at the time, especially then, and still today, really, was an oil economy, because oil meets a vastly wide range of requirements of energy needs, from heating to plane travel to cars getting petrol. Okay, so oil is very fundamentally important. And Reagan was elected as a consequence. Now, we know Reagan is really kind of a Cold War beast. He's so influential in this second Cold War in his leadership and his policy of actually not just containment, but rolling back, pushing back against the Soviet Union. He's so much more aggressive than anyone else as a American president. That is fundamentally important. So he was elected on a promise, on a platform, a manifesto pledge to be tough on the Soviets. Okay, so that's really, really significant. 1.5 million civilians in Afghanistan would sadly die. Now, that's a great human cost for this war. What is strange is that the Soviet Union won every battle, but they couldn't win the war. And the reason they couldn't win the war is because these Islamists were so ideological. It was seen it's almost like an honor to be martyred. And so, if a village had a young man that was martyred fighting the war, another 4 young men from that village would want to go and replace him and or equally be honored by being martyred. So these Islamists were unafraid of death, and they saw death as a glory. So it was very hard for the Soviet Union to fight against that. And also, there were Olympic boycotts. So America boycotted the Moscow Olympics in 1980. And then the USSR counter-boycotted the LA Olympics, I believe, in 1984. Now, I think one of the most important consequences, one that shouldn't be underestimated because it's like a very slow strangulation, is the economic sanctions which were imposed on the USSR. And Reagan was able to get other countries to impose sanctions on the USSR. Now, that was massively, massively important. So these consequences here are hugely important. And what I'd actually like you to do is do a diamond 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A diamond 9. Okay. Of those, which one do you think was the most significant and why? So I'd like you to, after you've added this to your paper in red pen, I'd like you to put that into a diamond 9. So that will be your final try now 5. And last but not least, here are the key figures that are worth revision. Brezhnev, Carter, Amin, Babrak Kemal, Reagan, and Gorbachev. It's a 10-year event, in essence, 1979 to 1989. And Gorbachev eventually pulls out because the USSR just can't sustain investing in this war. Okay, so it's massively important. It's of massive significance for your course. And it spans different dynamics between different leaders. Brezhnev was seen to be a stronger leader than Carter. Reagan was seen to be a stronger leader than Gorbachev. You certainly have a shift in those leadership patterns there. And really that spells out the kind of the end of the Soviet Union. Yeah, that journey the Soviet Union went on, the period of stagnation into a collapse. Okay, so I think it's a very fascinating part of history, really. Okay, guys, so I'd like to complete that diamond 9, and that'll be your final try now 5 if you have to complete it, if you've got 7 or under. And on that note, I'll say arrivederci and goodbye. So let me end that there. Stop recording. Stop recording.